EQ Video Tip. I'm your host, Eric Forsetter. Thanks again for watching another show of the EQ Video Tip. Before we jump into this week's tip, let's review the goals of EQ Video Tip. What's on tap for today? Well, we have a great article from Cameron Conaway that talks about the right way to process feedback. And we talked about getting feedback in the last EQ episode. This is a great way to segue it into how do we process that feedback? What do we do with it? And one of the most important things that Cameron is going to talk to us about is reflection, because processing feedback is something that we want to take and use over time as opposed to just in one segment. Let's jump into some of the big tips that Cameron has to offer us today. Tip number one, poise and of course process. We talked a little about this in the last episode, but when you step into a feedback session, you want to be very neutral. Don't be too enthusiastic. Don't be rejecting whatever that person has to say. Don't overjoy when you hear, hey, this is great. You want to take a moment and just be neutral. Just be a better listener. Try to absorb everything that's going on and then process it. You want to take time to really metabolize that feedback and let it run through your body as well as your mind. Think about what's going on. That means what you're feeling after someone said it to you, and investigate why you might be feeling a certain way, whether it's a positive comment or a negative comment. Remember, a lot of P's in this video, so poise and process are the first two things that we're going to do. Tip number two, some more P's, positionality and percolate. So when someone gives you feedback, think about the provider's motives and their position, their intent. Do they generally believe that they're going, or do you generally believe, I should say, that they're trying to help you out? Are you trusting of them? Are they trying to make you better and improve upon things, or are they just blowing smoke? Or are they just trying to be mean in a certain sense because they don't like your work? Whatever it is, get the positionality of them and then percolate it. Walk it through a decision tree to understand, hey, this person's trying to help. Do I value the feedback? Is it making sense? And how confident do you feel moving forward with that person's feedback? When you use these two P's, it'll get you to the next step. Tip number three, proceed. And I'm going to say proceed with caution, actually, because you might get a lot of feedback that gives you 10 or different things you need to work on. It's hard to actually change 10 or 15 things in yourself, especially if it's your personality, maybe it's your writing style, or the way that you're working. But if you can use a drip method to consistently change little things and practice those arts of change into your work over a long period rather than forcing them all at once, you'll improve upon yourself, especially if you believe that person is actually trying to help you out and you trust them. So remember to take a moment before you proceed with caution, and make a list of how you want to proceed, which things you're going to put into your everyday work or process, and slowly drip that into how you work on a day-to-day basis. This will help you in terms of achieving your goals. Our last tip, perspective. And if you think about this, ask someone who you respect to see your new performance and see how that's actually translating within your work or within whatever you're doing. You're constantly looking to improve all the time. And one of the things we talked about in the beginning is that you constantly reflect and you constantly have to have perspective on your work and on the different tasks that you are doing. If you take that perspective, it'll ensure that there isn't a mismatch between how you were perceived before and how you're being perceived now and how your work is actually being accomplished. So take the moment to constantly reflect and, of course, have perspective on what you're doing. That's a wrap for this week's EQ video tip. Remember the P's that we talked about: poise, process, positionality, percolate, proceed, and then, of course, perspective. Use these, incorporate them into your day-to-day routine to help you improve upon your work and the perception of others. So that concludes our EQ video tip for today.
Try incorporating some of these tips into your daily routine. But remember, use what works best for you and personalize it for yourself. Thank you always to our great research team for providing us with some great tips today. As always on EQ Video Tip, we want to end with gratitude. So thank you for watching. We really appreciate it. Here are some resources that you can use if you want more information on EQ going forward. Thank you again, and we look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Thank you.